Picture this. You're strapped to a gurney, a needle in your arm, or a mask over your face. The clock's ticking down. The ward's nod means it's over, except you're innocent. This isn't rare. Over 200 people sentenced to death in America were proven innocent. And yet, the system keeps rolling, killing more than 1,600 people since 1977. 1 out of every 8 death sentences ends in a mistake. Think about that. I'm pulling back the curtain. How they do it, who they kill, and the brutal truth they don't want you to see. Since modern executions resumed in 1977, the U.S. has put 1,640 plus people to death. Executions are concentrated in a handful of states. California, Florida, and Texas have executed more people than all other states combined. Think about that. The good part about that is most of that was way back. Texas and Florida are really leading the charge right now. Let's go over the history of the death penalty. I think that's really important, guys. In 1972, Furman versus Georgia, a Supreme Court case, halted executions, finding that then existing systems arbitrary and capricious. I'm no rocket scientist, sure, but capricious, I had to look the word up. It means given to sudden, unaccountable changes of mood or behavior, like a prosecutor, a judge, police investigators, evidence people, whoever's involved in the criminal justice system, you're at their whim, and that is dangerous. But in 1976, the Gregg versus Georgia case came. Court approved a new guided discretion law. Executions could resume. And in 1977, first execution after the Supreme Court approved the new law, Gary Gilmore by firing squad in Utah, which I actually remember that case. How many states use the death penalty? Well, as of October this month, 2025, 27 states in the U.S. authorized the death penalty by law. 23 states plus Washington, D.C. have abolished it entirely. And 3 states, California, Oregon, and Pennsylvania, still have it on the books, but have official moratoriums. Governors have halted executions, what that means. Political. So in practice, 27 states could carry it out, though not all are active. In 2025, only a core group, Texas, Florida, Alabama, Missouri, Oklahoma, South Carolina, are all actively executing people. And that is from the Death Penalty Information Center. Let me explain the Death Penalty Information Center for a little quick bit. They're an independent, they're not against the death penalty. They're not for the death penalty. They are all law, and they look at a whole bunch of things. Very, very good. I learned a lot following them guys. I really did. What had me going crazy on this thing? Yesterday. Yes, October 14th. Today's the 15th. October 14th, Florida carried out its 14th execution of this year, the most in a single year in the state, marking a new record for Florida. I don't think that's a really good record, guys. Samuel Lee Smithers, 72, was convicted of the 1996 killing of 2 women whose bodies were left in a rural pond. He was pronounced dead at 6:15 p.m. following a lethal injection at Florida State Prison in Stark. We call it near Stark, in Stark. That's what it's known. And that just happened yesterday, guys. Crazy. How do people die when they're executed? This is what got me all excited about what I'm doing today. Federal versus state authority. The federal government has its own execution protocol. Lethal injection with phenobarbital. That's a one-drug cocktail, not even a cocktail. They call something else a cocktail. That's what was used in the 13 federal executions in 2020, 2021. Think COVID. I don't know what's going on, but are they bored? Who knows right now? States set their own laws, which methods are allowed, how they're administered, and what the fallback options are. What's common? Let's do that. Okay, most states do it like this. They have to issue a warrant and notice. Now, that's a different warrant. You get the death sentence, then you get the warrant, and a judge signs an execution warrant. That means if you ever notice, they'll go to the governor or the president for federal, but they'll go to the governor and ask for a stay of the execution for whatever reason they come up with. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It really does depend a lot on who's in office, and that's crazy. But a judge signs an execution warrant. The Department of Corrections sets a date and time. Once the judge signs it, it's up to them. They can do it the next day, but they have a whole process. They have a pre-execution steps, which is movement to the death watch cell, monitoring by staff, and last visits and calls. You'd think they wouldn't care if a guy killed himself. I mean, he's going to be executed. It's cost more. I'm just, this has really got me a little messed up, and you're going to see why here in a little bit. Then they have pre-execution, the final statement, and last meal. Most states allow both, though the rules vary. In Texas, they did away with the special last meal, and that was in 2011. I can imagine what I would get for food. And why do I think that way? I have no idea. I really don't. They have a witness protocol. There's a defined witness list: the victims, the families, the press, the officials. Not anybody can just go to a execution. I wouldn't even want to go. I've seen enough people die in my life. And then they have a official pronouncement. A doctor or coroner has to declare them dead. You have to do that to sign the death certificate. But the state officials will make the statements to the press and all like that. I mean, it's amazing how they really do all this stuff. Method of executions. This is important. Most states default to lethal injection, but some allow or require electrocution, firing squads, gas chambers, or nitrogen hypoxia, depending on the statute and availability. Boy, we put a lot of work into these executions, don't we? And I can't wait to get to that part. Example: Florida's lethal injection is by default. Electrocution if an inmate requests. Alabama, lethal injection or nitrogen hypoxia. Electrocution by choice. In South Carolina, electrocution by default. Inmates can pick the firing squad. Think of that, a firing squad, man. You're talking about some barbaric stuff. But I do hear it's the best way to go. But who knows? There's a drug protocol. States don't all use the same drugs. Some use a single drug, phenobarbital, while others still authorize the older 3-drug cocktail I was talking about. It's as a doctor explained to me, they give you a sedative, and then they give you where you kind of go to sleep, and the phenobarbital is what kills you at the end. The timeline, the mask up procedures, especially with nitrogen hypoxia, the process, mask fitting, gas flow, duration, differs from state to state. Some use cyanide still. And then there's contingency ladders. Yeah, everybody thinks, oh, if you don't die when they first kill you, you get a break. No, you don't. There's a contingency ladders, they're called. Some states explicitly lay out backup methods if the main one is unavailable. Oklahoma law lists lethal injection, then nitrogen hypoxia, then electrocution, then firing squad in that order. Think of that. They ain't playing around. But oversight. There's no federal standard requiring transparency or medical best practices. Each Department of Corrections decides its own protocol, often kept secret until litigation forces the closure. Now, why would you want to do that? I mean, it's hard to believe I'm talking about this in 2025, but I am. Courts sometimes intervene with methods are challenged as unconstitutional under the 8th Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment. And that's what the Supreme Court usually hears. I am really a little bit confused about that. What's cruel and unusual? Isn't killing somebody just cruel and unusual? Whether you gas them, you electrocute them, you hang them, you shoot them. I don't know what is considered cruel and unusual. It's a shame that we as humans are doing that, but we are, and that is sad. Let me go by the methods of execution. Lethal injection, primarily method of every executing state. Drugs vary, single drug, phenobarbital, the cocktail, something like that. But it is a lethal injection. I don't know why they want to go away from that either. I mean, they use that in even animals, so I'm not sure. Electrocution, authorized, available in a few states like Tennessee, South Carolina, Florida as prisoner options. The more I've been watching, the more I've been researching this, it's amazing how the people get resigned to that fate. There's no will to live, so to speak. And I understand it as a man who's been in prison. Then you have firing squad. South Carolina used it twice this year. Twice. March 7th and April 11th. The first U.S. firing squad execution since 2010. Wow, think about that. A couple people lined up and they're going to just shoot you, Do you bleed out quick? Do they hit I don't know how it works. I can only assume. I hear this like, you'll have three shooters and one will have the bullet that goes right through the heart, or something like that. I think that's kind of sketchy because if you miss, you get a hit. I mean, anybody can miss. They can have a panic attack, whatever. I think it's crazy. Then you have gas chamber. You had a gas chamber. When I hear the word gas chamber, I think of 1940s during World War II. What happened to the Jewish people? I mean, man, when I watch anything like that, it drives me crazy. But it's still authorized in a few states, Arizona and Missouri, under certain circumstances, but rarely used. It's a funny, if you notice, I'm really talking about a lot of southern states, guys. That's crazy. And then you have nitrogen hypoxia. First ever used January 25th, 2024. Yeah, last year. Kenneth Eugene Smith from Alabama. Witnesses reported visible shaking, gasping for minutes, despite state claims of quick unconsciousness. Nitrogen hypoxia is the newest execution method in America. Instead of poison or electricity, it uses pure nitrogen gas. Breathing it cuts off oxygen and the body shuts down. Officials say it's clean and humane, but witnesses saw inmates shake and gasp for minutes before dying. No long studies, no clear answers, just an experiment playing out on death row. I always look at this and say to myself, hold on, who is saying something is humane? We don't know right now if a guy has a heart attack, how much pain he is in before he dies, or what happens before he dies. Nobody knows. Nobody came back from the dead and said, that's a good way to die. You hear people say, I'd never want to die in a fire, or I'd never want to die drowning. How do you know? Maybe something happens with the air in a fire and you automatically shut down. Or maybe when you drown, you take that last gulp and it's over. We don't know. Nobody's came back and said that. I love people say, well, how do you know? Of course, I don't want to be tortured. Torture is a whole different thing. I'm talking about the moment of death. We just don't know, guys. And to say we do would be wrong. According to inert gas asphyxiation sources, as of September 25th this year, last month, there have been 7 executions by nitrogen hypoxide in America. 6 in Alabama and 1 in Louisiana. All right, Alabama, what you doing? The next execution is what got me all on this. It's going to happen next week, October 23rd, 2025, in Alabama. And it's Anthony Todd Boyd, nitrogen hypoxia. Convicted in 1993 of the murder of Gregory Ugly, abducted, bound, set on fire over a drug deal. Boyd maintains innocence. The method and the protocol, not nitrogen hypoxia. Mass delivering pure nitrogen. I had to look up nitrogen to see why it would do that. And I guess it suffocates the other oxygen stuff you need. Alabama's protocol runs gas for 15 minutes or until cardiac death. The first uses of this method lasted 16 to 23 minutes. Now, the state of Alabama also said, now listen to this. Let's look at the big picture. There are 195 countries in the world. Only 55 countries retain and use the death penalty. 140 countries have abolished the death penalty in law or practice, which is pretty crazy. So, top executing countries. Who executes for what and how? Iran, 972 to 975 known executions, many for drug offenses. Documented juvenile offenders. Executions continue in violation of international law. Methods, hanging often. Wow. I'm going to shock you here. Saudi Arabia had 345 executions. Amnesty, highest in decades, including many for drug offenses. Method, beheading. Iraq, 63, largely terrorism related. Method, hanging. Egypt, sharp rise versus 2023. Methods, hanging. Offenses include terrorism and murder. United States, 25 this year. That's not much. Last year, mix of lethal injection, firing squad, and nitrogen hypoxia. Listen to this one. Youth executions. Yes, you heard me say youth executions in the first one I ran. Well, international law. bars executing people for crimes committed under 18 years old. But Iran continues to execute juveniles. Now, let me give you my views on the death penalty and why, and let's see where you land. I want to know in this video, in the comments, because I'm going to be really hot on this. First, it's no deterrent. Anybody tells you it's a deterrent is no idea. They have zero idea what they're talking about. It's not a deterrent. So, second, how politics, geography, religion, race all play a major role. And when you have that and it's not cut and dry, I get a lot of people talking to me and saying, Larry, how can you defend somebody? How can you? Because I believe in the law. Now, do I believe in all of our laws? No, I think our justice system is broke. And it's sad because you can have a politician come into office, change laws. We see it going on now. Geography. Why are more people dying in the South? I wouldn't think that there's a lot more murders in the South than the North. I don't know. Isn't it Chicago and Missouri? Well, Missouri, I guess, could be considered the South. New York, all those states up there. There's a lot of crime. There's a lot of people. So I disagree with that. I totally think, number three, I think that the death penalty is unfairly administered and it's biased. But it's not as biased as people think. They're saying, oh, it's all black people. That is not true, actually. More white people have been executed than black people or Hispanics. I'm going to give you those numbers. You're going to look at a chart right now. And look at this chart. And you can even go by victim and you can go by the race of the defendant or the perpetrator and the race of the victim. I did a lot of research on this. So you're going to like that. And I hope you're learning something because I am. I learned so much during this, guys. Now, the amount of innocent people who died, that number is not a joke. I'm going to put up a number right now. I'm going to put up a couple of things right now. There's been literally another reason I don't believe in the death penalty. Life in prison is worse. A lot of people say, no, it's not. It's that. Look at the people who died in prison violently, whether it's Jeffrey Epstein, whether it's Jeffrey Dahmer on the yard. A bunch of people who think they're okay end up getting killed in prison. And I call it karma, if you want to call it that, because people will say to me, hey, Larry, what do you think about a child molester or something like that? Obviously, guys, I don't like that. I mean, I have my real wow, it's hard for me to say I don't believe in the death penalty when I know if one of those people killed my grandkid or did something like that or my kids, I don't know what I'd do, but I don't think it'd be pretty. But I also know that putting them in prison is worse. Living like an animal when you don't know. And people have a will to survive. So it's not like, why don't everybody just kill themselves? I'm sure if you gave out free, drugs to kill yourself, a lot of people would do it. I watched a lot of guys when I was in prison. I was in maximum security prison with guys with 5 life sentences, 3 life sentences. And, we talk about that sometimes too. And the will to live is so strong. But I've watched them overdose on purpose, literally on purpose. I was in a cell with a drug dealer once, and in the prison, we're just hanging out. There's a double bunk bed, bunk beds. We used to hang in his cell. We cooked, do all that stuff. He was a drug dealer. So a guy comes into the cell and says, "Hey, I need." I'm not gonna mention names. Hey, I need some drugs. The guy looked at him, and I'm sitting on the bunk saying, "What's going on?" Because he turned he looked away like I'm gonna do something to you. And he goes, "You got some balls. You know how much you owe me?" The guy says, "I can't pay you." "And you want more?" He wanted 5 papers of heroin. In prison, a paper of heroin is $25, and it's a little shot. They do it, and they shoot it, and the whole work. He says, "I'm checking out." Now, the guy's looking at him, and I'm like, what the fuck? I don't have a life sentence. I'm like, oh, my God, what's going on? And the guy says, "I'm checking out. I don't care. I'm checking out." And I was like, oh, shit. Wow. And so the drug dealer gives him the papers of heroin, and I'm quiet as a church mouse. And he says to him, "Hey, listen, you better be dead in the morning or I'm going to kill you." I'm like, whoa, what the hell? This is wild. But it's true. And that's a person who lost hope. He killed himself. I'm not going to get up and stop him. This is no save the world shit. And it is fact that happens. And when I was in Atlanta, the heroin problem was so bad. They had overdoses like crazy. And they didn't have Narcan and all that shit. People would come out blue and never come back. They'd be on a stretcher, literally blue. Pretty wild, guys. In 1885, John Gordon from Rhode Island was executed for murder, found innocent. He was actually pardoned in 2011. That's crazy. In 1887, William Jackson Marion from Nebraska, executed for murdering his friend, who later turned up alive. Think of that. Holy shit. They didn't have a body, didn't have anything, and they just executed this guy. Wow. He got a pardon in 1987, 100 years later. In 1931, Alexander McKay Williams from Pennsylvania. Listen to this. A 16-year-old black kid, teenager, executed for murder. Convicted, vacated, and exonerated in 2022. 16 years old, killed. Right then and there. They don't even wait. There's no appeals, or they are, but they're not long. 1939, Joe Arity from Colorado, 23 years old, intellectually disabled, executed for rape murder. Since there's been passage of the Mental Health Act, they call it, and you can't kill someone who has an IQ of under 70. It's considered, I think, mentally retarded. Crazy, man. I mean, we were a brutal country, and we just didn't know it. In 1944, George Steiny Jr., South Carolina, 14 years old, executed after a one-day trial. Conviction vacated in 2014 for due process violations. Did you hear what I just said? One-day trial, 14, kill him. Unreal. It just blows my mind, man. 1951, the Martinville 7. It's in Virginia. 7 black men executed for rape in a racially biased trial. Post Sherman's pardoned in 2021 by Governor Ralph Northam. Man, you know, I don't know how many people could take that, to be honest. You know what I mean? Like the abuse they do. Let me know in the comments below. I'm going to be all over this. I'm going to put up a poll there as well. I want to know what people believe, because this is a topic that shouldn't be dropped. It's sadly, people in prison or incarcerated are forgotten by the citizens. And that's known. No voice, no representation. That's exactly what happens. That's why I don't believe what happened to me with our rights. Why don't I have my rights back? I know the law. I don't believe in it. In America, I believe if you do your time, you should have your rights back. What do you believe? I hope you guys learned something from this video. I did. And I hope you think a little bit about the death penalty and what happens to people, and maybe open up a conversation with people you know. I think it can help. All right, guys, let me know where you stand on the death penalty in the comments. I'm going to put up a poll as well. With that said, stay safe. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you in a few days. Have a great day.